I stood in the driveway of Grandpa's farmhouse watching my Uncle Richard load the last of the valuable furniture into his rented truck, each piece representing a memory being stolen from the place where I'd spent every summer of my childhood. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gravel as neighbors gathered to witness what felt more like a robbery than an inheritance distribution. "Sorry, Tommy," Uncle Richard had said 3 days earlier at Grandpa's funeral, his voice carrying false sympathy that fooled no one who knew him well. "The old man didn't leave you anything in his will. Everything goes to me as the only surviving son." At 22, I had expected to inherit at least some portion of the farm that had been my second home since my parents divorced when I was 7. Grandpa William had always promised that his legacy would continue through me, the grandson who'd learned to drive tractors and milk cows before most kids learned to ride bicycles. Uncle Richard had never shown interest in farming during the 40 years he'd lived in California, visiting maybe twice a decade and always complaining about rural life's inconveniences. His sudden appearance after Grandpa's death, armed with legal documents and moving trucks, felt like vultures descending on a carcass. The farmhouse looked violated as Uncle Richard's helpers carried out antique furniture, farming equipment, and personal belongings that had accumulated over Grandpa's 87 years of life. Each item loaded into the truck represented a connection to family history being severed by someone who viewed everything as merchandise to be appraised and sold. "You can take some clothes and maybe a few books," Uncle Richard had offered, with magnanimous generosity that made my stomach turn. "But the valuable stuff needs to be liquidated to settle the estate properly." Standing there, watching my childhood disappear into a rental truck, I felt a combination of grief and anger that made it hard to breathe. Something about Uncle Richard's confident dismissal of my relationship with Grandpa didn't feel right, but I had no legal standing to challenge decisions made by the official heir. Chapter 2. Searching for Answers. That evening, after Uncle Richard had driven away with his truck full of stolen memories, I walked through the empty farmhouse trying to process how completely I'd been excluded from Grandpa's final wishes. The rooms that had once buzzed with warmth and activity now echoed with hollow footsteps and the sound of my own confused breathing. Grandpa had always been meticulous about important papers, keeping financial records and legal documents in a roll-top desk that had belonged to his father. Uncle Richard had claimed that desk early in his looting process, along with all the files and papers it contained, including the will that supposedly left me nothing. I climbed the narrow stairs to Grandpa's bedroom, where family photos still hung on walls that Uncle Richard hadn't bothered to strip. The images showed 4 generations of family gatherings, holiday celebrations, and farm work that had been the foundation of our lives for over a century. One photograph caught my attention. Grandpa and me standing beside his prize bull at the county fair 3 years ago, both of us grinning with the pride of farmers who'd raised a champion animal through careful breeding and daily attention. His arm around my shoulders suggested a bond that went far beyond casual grandfather-grandson affection. "I don't understand, Grandpa," I said to the empty room, voicing confusion that had been growing since Uncle Richard's arrival. "You always said the farm would stay in the family. You taught me everything about running this place because you wanted me to carry on the tradition." The silence that answered my questions felt wrong, as if the house itself was hiding secrets that Uncle Richard had either missed or deliberately concealed. Grandpa had been sharp as a tack right up until his heart attack, not the kind of man who would forget promises made to his only grandson. I searched through closets and drawers that Uncle Richard had deemed worthless, looking for anything that might explain why I'd been completely excluded from inheritance arrangements. In the back of Grandpa's bedroom closet, behind clothes that smelled like Old Spice and hard work, I found something Uncle Richard had missed. Chapter 3. The Hidden Cabinet. Behind Grandpa's winter coats, partially concealed by shadows and old shoeboxes, stood a small wooden cabinet that I'd never noticed during my childhood explorations of this room. The piece was clearly handmade, its dovetailed joints and hand-rubbed finish indicating the kind of craftsmanship that Grandpa had always admired and practiced himself. The cabinet's door was secured with a simple latch that opened easily under my curious fingers, revealing an interior space about the size of a shoebox. Inside, wrapped in an old pillowcase, sat a cassette tape recorder that looked like it hadn't been used in years, but had been carefully preserved. Beside the recorder lay 3 cassette tapes labeled in Grandpa's careful handwriting with dates spanning the last 2 years of his life. The most recent tape was dated just 1 week before his death, suggesting he'd been recording something important right up until the end. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the recorder from its hiding place. wondering what secrets Grandpa had felt compelled to preserve in a format that most people had abandoned decades ago. The weight of the device felt substantial and purposeful, like a piece of evidence rather than a casual recording. A folded piece of paper had been tucked beneath the recorder, my name written on the outside in Grandpa's distinctive script. I opened it carefully, revealing a short message that made my heart race with hope and anticipation. Tommy, if you're reading this, then something has happened to me, and Richard has probably tried to claim everything for himself. Listen to these tapes, and you'll understand why I had to keep some things secret. The truth about our family and this farm is more complicated than anyone realizes. Don't let Richard destroy what took 4 generations to build. The real will is where only you would think to look. Love, Grandpa. The note confirmed suspicions I'd been afraid to voice, suggesting that Uncle Richard's version of inheritance arrangements didn't match Grandpa's actual intentions. More importantly, it implied the existence of another will that contradicted the document Uncle Richard had used to justify his appropriation of everything valuable. Chapter 4. Grandpa's Voice. The familiar sound of Grandpa's voice filled the empty bedroom, his words carrying the same warmth and wisdom that had guided me through childhood challenges and teenage confusion. Hearing him speak felt like receiving a message from beyond the grave, a final gift of guidance when I needed it most. Tommy, I'm recording this in case something happens to me before I can fix the mess that Richard has created with his lawyers and his schemes, Grandpa's voice began, his tone carrying an urgency I'd never heard during our face-to-face conversations. Your uncle has been pressuring me for 2 years to change my will and leave everything to him instead of preserving the farm for you. He's threatened legal action, claimed I'm mentally incompetent, and even tried to get doctors to declare me unfit to manage my own affairs. The revelation that Uncle Richard had been manipulating and threatening Grandpa made my anger burn hotter than grief, painting a picture of elder abuse that went far beyond simple greed. The systematic way my uncle had attempted to control Grandpa's final years suggested a calculated campaign rather than spontaneous inheritance grabbing. I pretended to give in to his pressure and had my lawyer draft a new will that leaves everything to Richard. Grandpa continued, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who'd outmaneuvered an opponent. But that document is a decoy, designed to keep Richard from causing trouble during my final months. The recording paused as Grandpa apparently took a sip of something, probably the coffee that had been his constant companion during long days of farm work and evening planning sessions. When he resumed speaking, his voice carried the tone of a man sharing secrets with his most trusted confidant. The real will, the one that leaves the farm to you like I always promised, is hidden where only someone who really knows this place would think to look. Richard was always too busy with his city life to pay attention to the details that matter to farmers. Grandpa's words sent hope racing through my chest, suggesting that his promises hadn't been forgotten, and my inheritance hadn't been stolen, just temporarily concealed from someone who didn't deserve to know family secrets. Chapter 5. Hidden Evidence. The second tape contained Grandpa's detailed account of Uncle Richard's increasingly aggressive attempts to gain control of the farm, including recorded phone conversations that painted a disturbing picture of manipulation and threats. Grandpa had apparently been documenting his son's behavior with the thoroughness of someone preparing for legal battle. Richard called again today demanding that I sell the south pasture to that development company, Grandpa's voice explained, his tone mixing sadness with determination. He actually threatened to have me committed to a nursing home if I don't cooperate with his plans to liquidate the farm piece by piece. The recordings included snippets of actual conversations where Uncle Richard's voice carried the cold calculation of someone who viewed his aging father as an obstacle to profitable real estate transactions. His words revealed contempt, not just for farming, but for the man who'd given him life and opportunities. "You're being stupid, old man," Uncle Richard's voice crackled through the poor recording quality. "This farm is worth millions to developers, but you're too stubborn to see past your sentimental attachment to a way of life that died 50 years ago." Grandpa's responses showed remarkable restraint, but also steel-backed determination to protect agricultural land that represented 4 generations of family investment. His refusal to sell productive farmland to housing developers had clearly frustrated Uncle Richard's get-rich-quick schemes. The third tape revealed the location of additional evidence and the real will. In the old grain bin behind the barn, you'll find medical records proving I'm mentally competent despite Richard's claims otherwise, Grandpa explained. And remember where we used to watch sunsets? Look for the coffee can buried 3 feet east of the lightning-struck oak tree. Early the next morning, I found everything exactly where Grandpa had described. The medical records from Dr. Martinez confirmed Grandpa's mental competence, while the buried coffee can contained a will that left the farm to me, dated 3 months before his death and properly witnessed by neighbors. The real will explicitly stated that Uncle Richard's behavior had disqualified him from inheriting agricultural property that he would destroy for profit. Chapter 6. Legal Confrontation. I drove directly to Martha Williams, the attorney whose name appeared on the real will. Her law office occupied a converted Victorian house on the town's main street, its atmosphere suggesting competence and discretion. "Mr. Fletcher," Martha said as I explained my situation, "I've been expecting someone from your family to contact me. Your grandfather was very specific about when and how this will should be revealed." Martha reviewed all the evidence I'd brought, including the tape recordings, medical evaluations, and documentation of Uncle Richard's pressure tactics. Her expression grew more serious with each piece of evidence, suggesting that my uncle's behavior constituted legal elder abuse rather than simple inheritance disputes. "This is actually a criminal matter as well as a civil one," Martha explained. "Your uncle's attempts to manipulate a vulnerable elderly person into changing his will through threats and coercion constitute elder abuse under state law." Martha's phone call to Uncle Richard was brief and explosive, his voice loud enough for me to hear his angry denials and threats to fight any challenges to his inheritance. The confidence that had characterized his behavior since Grandpa's funeral cracked noticeably when confronted with evidence of legal planning he'd known nothing about. "Richard will need to return all property he's removed from the farm," Martha informed me after ending the call. "If he refuses, we'll seek court orders and pursue criminal charges for elder abuse and theft." 2 days later, Uncle Richard appeared at Martha's office, accompanied by a criminal defense attorney, whose presence confirmed that the legal implications of his actions extended far beyond civil inheritance disputes. His earlier confidence had been replaced by nervous sweat and desperate attempts to justify behavior that looked increasingly criminal under legal scrutiny. Uncle Richard's attorney requested a private meeting to discuss potential settlement options that would avoid criminal prosecution, a development that confirmed the strength of evidence Grandpa had accumulated against his son. "Richard will return all furniture, equipment, and personal items within 30 days, his attorney announced. "In exchange, Thomas agrees not to pursue criminal charges for elder abuse." Chapter 7. Rebuilding Trust. 6 months after discovering Grandpa's hidden tapes, the farm was operating more efficiently than ever, with improvements and modernizations that honored his memory while embracing contemporary agricultural practices. Uncle Richard had returned all the stolen property as required, though our family relationship remained permanently damaged by his attempted theft. The farmhouse felt alive again with furniture and equipment that belonged in rooms where they'd served our family for generations. Each piece carried memories of holiday gatherings, family celebrations, and daily life that had been temporarily stolen, but ultimately restored to their proper places. I'd hired 2 part-time workers to help with daily operations, choosing young men from farming families who understood the value of agricultural work and wanted to learn modern farming techniques. Their presence brought energy and fresh perspectives to operations that had suffered from Grandpa's declining health during his final years. The financial management of the farm had improved dramatically with professional accounting services and modern equipment that increased efficiency while reducing labor costs. The property that Uncle Richard had dismissed as outdated and unprofitable was generating enough income to support continued growth and technological advancement. Martha Williams had become more than just my attorney, serving as a trusted advisor about legal matters and business decisions that affected the farm's long-term sustainability. Her guidance about estate planning had helped me understand the importance of protecting agricultural assets from future family disputes. "Your grandfather would be proud of what you've accomplished," Martha observed during one of our quarterly business meetings. "The farm is more productive now than it's been in 20 years, and you've done it while preserving the agricultural traditions he valued most." On quiet evenings, I often sat under the lightning-struck oak tree where Grandpa and I had shared our sunset conversations, listening to the sounds of cattle settling for the night and planning improvements that would ensure this land remained productive for future generations. The tape recorder now sat in a place of honor on the kitchen mantelpiece, a reminder of Grandpa's wisdom in preparing for challenges he'd anticipated. Chapter 8. Family Restoration. A year after the inheritance battle, I received an unexpected letter from Uncle Richard's daughter, Jennifer, my cousin who'd grown up in California and had known little about our family's agricultural heritage. Her note expressed regret about her father's behavior and curiosity about the farm that had caused such bitter family conflict. I never understood why Dad was so determined to inherit the farm when he'd always said farming was a waste of time, Jennifer wrote. After learning about what really happened with Grandpa's will, I'd like to visit and understand what made this place so important to our family. Her visit the following month revealed a young woman who'd inherited her grandfather's intelligence and practical nature, rather than her father's mercenary attitudes toward family heritage. She spent 3 days learning about farm operations and family history, her appreciation for agricultural life growing with each new experience. "I can see why Grandpa wanted you to inherit this place," Jennifer said as we checked cattle on her final evening. "Dad would have sold everything within 5 years and moved on to the next investment opportunity. This farm needs someone who understands that preservation is more important than profit." Her words provided healing for family wounds that had festered since Uncle Richard's attempted theft, suggesting that not all family members had inherited his destructive attitudes toward agricultural heritage. Jennifer's respect for what Grandpa had built offered hope for eventual family reconciliation. She also brought news that Uncle Richard had invested his inheritance in a failed real estate venture and lost most of the money within 8 months of receiving it. His prediction that farming was financially inferior to modern business investments had proven ironically wrong as my agricultural operation prospered, while his urban investments collapsed. Jennifer's visit concluded with her requesting copies of family photos and documents that would help her children understand their agricultural heritage, even though they'd grown up far from farming communities. Her daughter showed particular interest in animal husbandry and crop management, suggesting that farming genes might skip generations but remain viable in family bloodlines. Chapter 9. Legacy Preserved. Standing in the barn where Uncle Richard had once claimed ownership, I surveyed equipment and facilities that represented not just agricultural success, but vindication of Grandpa's faith in my ability to preserve our family's farming legacy. The morning sunlight streaming through open doors revealed a space that buzzed with productive activity. The farm had become a model operation that neighboring agricultural families visited to learn about sustainable practices and modern equipment applications. The recognition validated Grandpa's belief that preserving farmland for knowledgeable farmers would benefit entire rural communities rather than just individual families. Jennifer had maintained regular contact, bringing her children for summer visits that introduced another generation to agricultural life and family history. The systematic improvements I'd implemented had increased the farm's value by over 40%, while maintaining its character as a working agricultural operation. "Grandpa was right about choosing you to inherit this place," Jennifer said during her most recent visit, watching her children help with evening chores. "You've turned it into something special while keeping the traditional values that made it important." Uncle Richard's occasional Christmas cards carried polite inquiries about farm operations, but his tone remained distant and formal. His failed investment ventures had apparently taught him humility about financial management, though not enough to acknowledge his attempted theft or apologize for elder abuse. The hidden tape recorder remained on the kitchen mantelpiece, a reminder of Grandpa's wisdom in preparing for challenges he'd anticipated, and his faith in my ability to protect our family's agricultural heritage from those who would destroy it for profit. That evening, as I planned improvements for the coming year and reviewed financial projections that showed continued growth, I felt profound gratitude for Grandpa's careful preparation and the courage he'd shown in documenting truth despite family pressure and threats. The farm that Uncle Richard had tried to steal was now thriving under management that combined modern efficiency with traditional values, proving that inheritance should go to those who understand preservation rather than those who demand entitlement. Chapter 10. Future Generations. 2 years after discovering the hidden tapes, I married Sarah Collins, a veterinarian who shared my passion for sustainable agriculture and family heritage preservation. Our wedding took place in the meadow where Grandpa used to graze his prize cattle, surrounded by farming families who'd become our extended community. The farm continued expanding, with new facilities for organic crop production and heritage breed livestock that attracted visitors from agricultural colleges studying traditional farming methods. Sarah's expertise in animal health complemented my crop management knowledge, creating a partnership that strengthened our operation. Jennifer's children spent entire summers with us now, learning the same farming skills that Grandpa had taught me decades earlier. Their enthusiasm for agricultural life suggested that family farming traditions would continue through another generation, despite Uncle Richard's attempts to destroy our heritage. "Uncle Tommy, can you teach me to drive the tractor like Grandpa taught you?" Jennifer's 8-year-old son asked during his latest visit, his eagerness reminding me of my own childhood excitement about farm equipment and livestock care. The continuity between generations filled me with satisfaction, knowing that Grandpa's vision for preserving family land was being realized through children who appreciated agricultural life rather than viewing it as outdated drudgery. We'd also established a scholarship fund for rural students pursuing agricultural education, using a portion of the farm's profits to support young people who might otherwise lack resources for college or technical training in farming methods. The program honored Grandpa's belief that knowledge and education were essential for successful farming, while ensuring that financial barriers wouldn't prevent motivated students from learning modern agricultural techniques. Chapter 11. Full Circle. Standing under the lightning-struck oak tree where I'd found Grandpa's hidden will, I watched my own children play in the meadow, where 4 generations of our family had learned to appreciate agricultural life and rural values. The sunset painted the sky with the same golden colors that had inspired countless evening conversations between Grandpa and me. Sarah approached carrying our newborn daughter, the 5th generation, to call this farm home. The baby's presence represented continuity and hope, proof that family heritage could survive attempts at destruction and emerge stronger through careful preservation and committed stewardship. "She'll grow up knowing this land like you did," Sarah said, settling beside me on the bench I'd built in Grandpa, with stories about the grandfather who was wise enough to protect his legacy from those who would have destroyed it. The farm's success had exceeded every projection, generating enough income to support our growing family, while funding improvements that enhanced both productivity and environmental sustainability. Modern equipment worked alongside time-tested methods, creating an operation that honored tradition while embracing innovation. Jennifer's latest letter brought news that Uncle Richard's business ventures continued failing, while our agricultural operation prospered through careful management and long-term thinking. The contrast validated every decision Grandpa had made about choosing preservation over quick profit. The hidden tape recorder sat in our living room now, a conversation piece that visitors admired while learning about family history and the importance of documenting truth when facing manipulation and threats. Many farming families had similar stories about inheritance disputes that threatened agricultural heritage. "Grandpa would be amazed by what you've built here," Sarah observed, watching our children explore the same fields where I'd spent my childhood summers learning about responsibility, hard work, and the satisfaction that came from caring for land and livestock. As evening settled over fields that would feed another generation of our family, I felt profound gratitude for the wisdom and foresight that had preserved this inheritance, despite those who would have destroyed it for short-term gain. Thank you for listening to my story about hidden truths, family loyalty, and the power of careful documentation to protect what matters most. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Please tell me what part of the world you're listening from, and share your own experiences with family heritage or inheritance challenges. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories about rural life, family dynamics, and the ongoing importance of preserving agricultural traditions for future generations.